HOA banned my fence and mocked me, so I built a fortified castle with a working drawbridge. Have you ever had a neighbor try to control your life, only to find out they picked the wrong person to mess with? It all started with a simple plan: a fence. I just moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place where picket fences and manicured lawns were the unspoken law. My new home, a modest two-story on a corner lot, backed up to a busy road. The noise was relentless cars speeding by, horns blaring, the occasional screech of tires. A fence, I thought, would give my family some peace, a barrier between us and the chaos. But the HOA, led by the iron-fisted Karen Whitmore, had other ideas. When I submitted my request for a 6-foot wooden fence, the response was swift and brutal. Denied. Fences disrupt the neighborhood's aesthetic harmony. Aesthetic harmony? My backyard was a soundstage for highway noise, and Karen was worried about harmony? At the community meeting, she didn't just reject my proposal, she mocked it. A fence? What's next? A moat and a drawbridge? She sneered, her cronies chuckling like a high school clique. The room erupted in laughter, and I felt my face burn. But as I sat there, humiliated, an idea sparked. Karen had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I went home that night, fuming but determined. If Karen thought she could bully me into submission, she was about to learn a lesson. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. HOAs have rules, but they're not untouchable. I scoured the bylaws looking for loopholes. Turns out, while fences were heavily regulated, there was no mention of decorative structures or landscaping features. The gears in my mind started turning. Karen's sarcastic jab about a moat and drawbridge wasn't just a taunt, it was genius. I wasn't going to build a fence. I was going to build something bigger, something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I called my cousin, Mike, a contractor with a knack for unconventional projects. "You ever built a castle?" I asked. He laughed, thinking I was joking. When I explained, his tone shifted. "You're serious?" "Hell yeah, I'm in." We were about to turn my backyard into a fortress. The plan was audacious but legal. I'd transform my backyard into a medieval-inspired, decorative structure, complete with stone walls, turrets, and a working drawbridge over a man-made moat. The HOA couldn't touch me if I stayed within the property lines and called it art. I hired an architect to draft plans that complied with local building codes while pushing the limits of creativity. The moat would be a shallow water feature, lined with stone and fed by a recirculating pump. The drawbridge, a wooden marvel reinforced with steel, would span it, operated by a chain and pulley system inspired by medieval designs. The walls would be concrete, faced with faux stone to mimic a castle's grandeur. Permits were filed, and to my delight, the city approved them. The HOA wasn't notified. Why would they be? This wasn't a fence. It was a landscaping feature. Construction began quietly. Mike's crew worked fast, pouring the foundation for the walls and digging the moat. Neighbors started to notice. At first, it was just curious glances, but soon, whispers spread. Karen caught wind of it a week in, storming over with her clipboard like a general marching into battle. "What is this monstrosity?" she demanded, eyeing the half-built stone wall. I smiled sweetly. "It's a decorative structure, Karen. Fully permitted. Would you like to see the plans?" Her face turned beet red. She sputtered about community standards and eyesores, but I handed her a copy of the bylaws. "Show me where it says I can't build this," I said. She couldn't. For once, Karen was speechless, retreating with a promise to take this to the board. Good luck, I thought. The board couldn't override city permits. Then came the twist. Mrs. Delaney, the sweet old widow next door, became an unexpected ally. She'd lived in the neighborhood for decades and despised Karen's reign of terror. Over coffee one morning, she shared a bombshell. She'd found an old HOA charter from the 1970s, buried in her attic. It explicitly allowed architectural expressions of individuality, as long as they met safety codes. Karen's modern bylaws had conveniently ignored this clause. Mrs. Delaney, with a mischievous glint in her eye, offered to present it at the next HOA meeting. "Let's give her a taste of her own medicine," she said. couldn't believe it. The quiet 80-year-old who baked cookies for the neighborhood was ready to go to war. The HOA meeting was a spectacle. Karen had rallied her loyalists, ready to slap me with fines or lawsuits. She stood at the podium, clutching her gavel like a scepter, and launched into a tirade about my ridiculous castle ruining property values. The room was tense, her allies nodding furiously. Then Mrs. Delaney stood up, frail but fierce, and dropped the charter on the table. "According to this," she said, her voice steady, "Mr. Thompson's structure is perfectly legal. You've overstepped, Karen." The room gasped. Karen's jaw dropped as Mrs. Delaney read the clause aloud, her words cutting through the silence like a sword. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others whispering in shock. Karen tried to recover, stammering about misinterpretations. But the damage was done. Her authority was crumbling, and I hadn't even said a word. Construction continued, and the castle took shape. The moat shimmered under the sun. The drawbridge creaked satisfyingly as we tested it, and the stone walls rose 10 feet high, topped with crenellated battlements. Neighbors stopped by daily, some appalled, others enchanted. Kids begged to see the drawbridge in action, and I obliged, raising and lowering it to their delight. The local news caught wind of the story, dubbing it the suburban castle. Social media exploded, with ex-posts calling me everything from a genius to a lunatic. Karen's allies tried to spin it, claiming I was destroying the neighborhood. But the tide was turning. People were tired of her petty dictatorship. One ex-post summed it up: "Karen banned a fence, so this guy built a castle." Legend. The hashtag Castle vs. Karen trended locally. Karen's final stand came when she filed a formal complaint with the city, claiming my castle violated zoning laws. She even hired a lawyer, a slick guy in a cheap suit who showed up at my door with a cease and desist letter. I invited him in, offered him coffee, and showed him my permits, the HOA charter, and a stack of supportive letters from neighbors. His confidence faded as he realized Karen's case was flimsy. The city dismissed her complaint, citing my compliance with all regulations. Karen's lawyer advised her to drop it, but she doubled down, organizing a protest outside my house. Picture this: a dozen HOA members with signs reading, "No castles in suburbia," while my drawbridge loomed behind them, a silent middle finger to their nonsense. The protest backfired when curious onlookers showed up, snapping photos and cheering for the castle. Karen's humiliation was complete. In the end, the castle stood as more than a structure, it was a symbol of defiance. My family finally had peace from the road noise, the moat and walls muffling the chaos. Kids in the neighborhood treated it like a playground, and I hosted medieval nights with BBQs and drawbridge demos. Mrs. Delaney became a local hero, her charter discovery sparking calls for Karen's resignation. At the next election, Karen lost her HOA presidency to none other than Mrs. Delaney, who promised a fairer, less tyrannical board. The neighborhood felt lighter, freer, like a weight had been lifted. Looking back, I could have built that fence anyway, fought the HOA in court and won. But this was better. The castle wasn't just a win, it was a statement. You don't mess with someone who dreams big and fights smart. My backyard fortress, with its working drawbridge, stands as a reminder. Sometimes, the best way to fight petty power is with audacious creativity. So, what do you think? Did I go too far, or was Karen's comeuppance just right? Share your thoughts below.